Brazilian Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes' recent ruling, which places former President Jair Bolsonaro under an electronic ankle monitor and bars him from approaching embassies, is seen as well justified by prominent criminal law specialists, legal scholars Davi Tangerino UERJ and Ori Lopes Pacares, who have previously voiced criticism of some of Moraes' past judgments, suggest these measures aim to thwart any attempt by Bolsonaro to seek asylum in the U.S. Embassy in Brasilia. Such a move would undoubtedly complicate his legal proceedings and intensify the diplomatic strain between Brazil and the United States. However, Tangerino expressed reservations about the order preventing Bolsonaro from communicating with his son, Congressman Eduardo Bolsonaro, even while acknowledging that restricting communication between investigated parties is a common practice in Brazil's justice system. Moraes' broad decree also includes a ban on Bolsonaro's social media use, a curfew for nights and weekends, and a search of his home, which uncovered $14,000 in cash. Bolsonaro, in a press conference, dismissed the new federal police operation as politically motivated, stating, "I never thought of leaving Brazil or seeking refuge in an embassy." The first panel of the Supreme Court's virtual plenary has since upheld Moraes' decision, which was initiated by a request from the federal police and supported by the Attorney General's Office. Justice Moraes' ruling cites evidence that Bolsonaro and his son coordinated with the Donald Trump administration to undermine Brazilian authorities and interfere with the former president's ongoing Supreme Court case, where he faces accusations of leading a coup attempt. This comes after Trump announced a 50% tariff on Brazilian exports on July 9th, citing Bolsonaro's alleged persecution as justification. Eduardo Bolsonaro later publicly claimed Trump's tariffs were a direct result of his lobbying efforts. To defend his father, Eduardo Bolsonaro moved to the U.S. in February and has since held meetings with U.S. government officials and Trump allies, seeking actions against Brazilian judicial authorities, including direct sanctions on Moraes. Consequently, the Supreme Court launched an investigation into Eduardo for obstruction of justice, later including Jair Bolsonaro. A key piece of evidence cited against the former president was his transfer of 2 million reals, approximately $360,000, Austin Pic's donations to his son in the U.S. The decision also highlights social media posts from both Bolsonaro and his son, thanking Trump and implying U.S. sanctions would only cease if an amnesty was granted to those accused of the coup attempt against President Lula's inauguration. According to Ori Lopes Jr., it would be absurd for the Supreme Court to alter its investigations into Bolsonaro due to U.S. interference, emphasizing the independence of Brazil's government branches. He argues Moraes' decision is well-founded, based on evidence that Bolsonaro, his son, sought to disrupt the criminal proceedings. Whether we agree with the decision or not, it has a basis, he stated, noting it originated from a police request that was endorsed by the Attorney General. With shared responsibility among the justices, Lopes Jr. believes the ruling aims to prevent judicial interference and block Bolsonaro from fleeing Brazil or seeking asylum. If he received asylum in the U.S. Embassy, it would create a massive, very serious problem. Davi Tangerino shares this perspective, viewing Moraes' action as a preemptive measure to prevent Bolsonaro's potential flight to the U.S. rather than retaliation for tariffs. This decision is directly connected to Trump's offensive. If the United States decides to put Bolsonaro on a plane, it becomes much harder for Brazil to resist. Moraes seems to want to prevent that. He explained, both experts generally agreed that the social media ban on Bolsonaro was not abusive, given its reported use to pressure the judiciary. However, the prohibition on Bolsonaro speaking with his son Eduardo raised strangeness. Lopes Jr. acknowledged that since Eduardo is acting as Bolsonaro's spokesperson in the U.S. and actively seeking to interfere in a criminal case, the communication ban could be justified. Tangerino, conversely, sees such a ban as an infringement on the right to defense, though he noted it's a common practice in Brazilian courts.